and take a quick roll call. Looks like everybody's here. I'm present. Trustee Huff.
Present.
And Trustee Romero.
Present.
Dr. Canby, Trustee Canby. I see him there. And Trustee Dryden.
Present.
She's present. Turn this back. And Dr. Ramirez. Present. And Ms. Peterson.
Present.
Present. And Ms. Torres.
Present.
Present. Everybody's here in the county for. We appreciate that. We'd like to begin with the adoption of the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the agenda for tonight? I can't hear any. We have two trustees that are remote. I can see Dr. Canby. I cannot see Ms. Dryden, so I'm going to assume that there's no issues with the agenda tonight. All those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0 in favor. Any public comment on closed session items?
No.
There's no public comment for closed session items. We'll now adjourn to closed session, where we're going to discuss the superintendent's evaluation and consult with the district negotiator regarding negotiations with MUTA and West, personnel regarding in relation to the government code and potential litigation. And we'll return approximately 6:30, 6:45, somewhere. Closed session at, okay, we're back. Okay. We just returned from closed session at 6:57 and no action was taken during the closed session. We'd like to have our formal introduction or opening of this meeting by having the flag salute. I've invited Mr. DeMaria and Ms. Grogan, if they would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for that. We'd like to adopt the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any discussion, any points that we need to bring up from the minutes? I don't see any. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Audience to address the Board of Trustees. Are there any comment cards? No comment cards. Okay, we'll now move on to the superintendent's report. Time is now yours, Dr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Board President, Mr. Sullivan. Pleasure to be here with you. We actually have, we're going to begin with a celebration of our valued Mesa employees, and we have quite a few to acknowledge, and we have some things here to my left as a small token of our appreciation for their dedication. So we'll start with two really important individuals who are now at the 5-year mark, celebrating 5 years of service to the district. I'll start with and before you come up here, just let me say a couple of things in recognition of you. Okay, I'll start with Mr. Jose Carreño. who is a paraprofessional for us, but you know, that title is a working title because he does so much more for us. But Mr. Carreño has been phenomenal for us over the last 5 years, working primarily as a paraprofessional, but really supporting all of us, supporting our students. He has very quickly become somebody who students can count on a daily basis, communicate with him. And just he's always looking out for their well-being, for their welfare. He is fully a member of our staff, well respected, well regarded by our students, by our families. We are very, very fortunate to have him with us. Hopefully someday a parent here at Mesa as well, because we're working on that. But the point here is that he has been a valued member and a very, very treasured one by all of us. So I want to acknowledge your 5 years of service to Mesa and do so with a small recognition here. If you'd like to come up. Thanks so much. All right, next we have, and I want to say a couple of words in Spanish as well, but next we have Elvira Castañeda, who is our food services worker. But again, just being here at Mesa, you never have just one role. Elvira has helped us out tremendously over the years through tough times during the pandemic. She was there helping us out, being there for kids, running and helping coordinate our food service programs, has cooked us up some delicious meals, has just been a smiling face to kids and a really valued member of Mesa. Ha sido usted una tremendo apoyo para nosotros. Muchas gracias por su servicio, muchas gracias por su dedicación y por hacer a todos sentir tan unidos y a los niños en particular. So I'd like to recognize Mrs. Elvira Castañeda as well for her 5 years of service to Mesa. Okay, and a couple of our folks weren't able to make it, but I think they also deserve just some compliments and an acknowledgement of their incredible efforts. So celebrating 15 years is Mrs. Christy Fisher. Mrs. Fisher has been a phenomenal teacher here. In my time, I found her to be really just highly intelligent, highly professional, highly skilled. She's the kind of teacher that just takes a lot of her time to research things and explore and really do so in service to her kids and to her craft. I think this can be said of many teachers, but I'll say it here about Mrs. Fisher. She's somebody who's incredibly conscientious about the work that she does and the impact that she brings. And she's been a phenomenal mentor to others. And then she's got her little one here now as well. So her commitment to this community, to Mesa, continues. So she is now celebrating 15 years with us, and we're very fortunate to have her as part of our teaching group, and just very excited to have her continue with us in a different role next year. But I won't give too much away on that front. But she's going to be a continued contributor, and just very proud of her efforts. We have a little acknowledgement for her as well in service, and we'll make sure she gets it. But we have just 15 years of service, just very proud of her accomplishments and what she's been able to give us here at Mesa. We can give her a big round of applause. Also in our food services department, we have Debbie Sussex, who has been phenomenal for us throughout many, many years and many, many generations of kids at this point. As a mother of Mesa children, she's been she knows it from the inside out. A very loving person, very caring person, somebody who takes her work very, very seriously, and has done so for 2 decades. And we're very fortunate to have her, very gracious as a person. And again, a person who a few years ago during tough times continued to be here day in and day out. So for our in celebration of 20 years of service, Mesa has also a small token of our appreciation for you as well. Debbie, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you so much. It's an honor feeding all of your children. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Oh, thank you. Love your whole family. Thank you. Thanks for being
All right. Next, we have, and Ms. McKenna was not able to be here, but we have Treese McKenna celebrating 25 years of service to Mesa. She has taught across grade spans, and for the last several years has been in middle school. And while and actually middle school, in all sense of the word, she was in 6th, and now the last several years has been in 8th grade. And she has just been an amazing person, contributor. Like other people here at Mesa, she carries on many, many roles. And, you know, most recently, she's been part of the mock trial team, but she's just been a wonderful, wonderful person, a wonderful role model, I think, for kids and for young people. She really wants the best for them. And that is something that I found to be true in visiting her classroom and hearing her talk about students. And I just can't thank her enough, you know, over 2 decades of service to Mesa. And so we're very, very fortunate to have her. And just our gratitude to Mrs. McKenna for her years of service. And make sure she gets this as well.
Dr. Mears, if I could interject one
Yes.
thing about Ms. McKenna, I think that her cornflake has been here just as long.
Yes.
You may be right about that.
Am I correct on that?
You may be right about that. You may be right. You may be right. Yeah. Yeah. I saw it basking just late last week. Still very much motivated. Yes. Yes. Okay. So and now we have two amazing people who have dedicated their lives you know, to Mesa. We've all benefited from their time here. I'll start with Mr. DeMaria. Mr. DeMaria, 27 years of service to Mesa. Just an amazing person, incredible joy in teaching, an educator, a real educator. Generations of kids who come back, generation of families who come back, I don't know who he doesn't know, but he's certainly has touched many, many lives and continues to and will continue to. And we have been incredibly fortunate to have had him for this long. His presence, his influence will be missed. And he is somebody that I think just his approach to students in particular, I've been very, very impressed by his ability to remain very current. And that's because values are timeless, right? Values are timeless. When you lead with values, it connects with people, and young people are the best detectors of that. So I want to share with Mr. DeMaria that we have this recognition in honor of your retirement and for the dedication, enthusiasm, generosity you've demonstrated as an educator, mentor, colleague, and friend. So this is for Mr. Matthew.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, they're doing it, they're going, boot. Put it on. It's a complete honor to be at this school and it's been a privilege. I love this school. I love the kids. I love the staff. It's an amazing career and I just hope more people can appreciate, what this place is because it's a really special place. Thank you, board members, for all that you do. I mean, you don't get much accolades because it's a hard job. And I've taught many of your kids, Stephen. Yep, wonderful family. Thank you, Brianna. Worked with her husband here. Thank you, Tammy.
Next, we have Mrs. Carolyn Grogan. Mrs. Grogan, it's been a pleasure getting to know you these last couple of years. Such a dignified educator, just a dignified educator. Somebody who really carries herself with utmost professionalism, who cares. We've had a couple of conversations, more than a couple, late in the evening when she's been here, just carrying on, doing what she does, preparing, just putting in her time. And I'm very fortunate that you gave me enough of an insight into who you are as a person, your background, you know, how your deep roots to Mesa as a student. And that is just amazing. It's an amazing journey. Generations of kids who have come through, and that was just evidenced earlier today, the love and affection that these young people have for you. And again, holding them to a standard, but doing so with a lot of love and compassion is what comes to my mind when I think of your efforts, and certainly closing out on a strong note this year. So as with Mr. DiMaria, but specific to Mrs. Grogan, again, in honor of your retirement, for the dedication, enthusiasm, and generosity you have demonstrated as an educator, mentor, colleague, and friend. Thank you so much on your retirement.
And what if I may like to echo Mr. DiMaria's sentiments and thanking all of you. It's been quite the experience and you're right, my roots here from D. So as a former student and having brought my children here, I couldn't be proud to be part of the Smith family. And thank you all. Thank you.
Can we get a picture with you on? Oh. Yeah, that's. Yeah. It is. It is. What's that? What's that? Come on, Neil, and none of us are. You want to be right here with us? So are we all getting in one day? Okay.
1, 2, 3. Maybe.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Elvira. Thank you, Ms. Kuklinski. Mrs. Morgan, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Brogan. All right, so just a transition and again, just a lovely opportunity. We had Mrs. Morgan coordinated a nice little gathering of all the students, as a matter of fact, a surprise gathering this morning where all of the students, families, some families came out, staff were able to give their send off to Mrs. Brogan and Mr. DiMaria. And it was a surprise to them. And it was just great to see them be celebrated, just by their community and hopefully they felt that appreciation, admiration from all of us. So as is customary, just in other presentations, we've had some events here, many, and this is just a couple. We had our recent field trip to JPL, and I know that this Mr. Sullivan's told me that this trip has been a kind of a staple here at Mesa, but it hadn't been for a little bit. And so I'm glad that we were able to re-engage in that. I found it to be a phenomenal opportunity to have our students just be exposed to a world around them. Some of them knew about it, others did not. But I think more than anything else, it was an intrigue that comes from being there with people doing just regular old folks. Well, they're not as regular, but they're very gifted in their own way, but certainly doing amazing things, amazing things. And so they were able to hear about the history of NASA, JPL's role in that, what they do now. And we're certainly hoping that it continues to be a tradition here that students in the future can continue to can continue to participate in. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Sullivan.
I know Ms. Dryden was there and had a great, I'm certain that she and her husband had a great time there as well, but the students, I recall from my experience there at JPL is that one of the engineers told me that over the course, this type of event is so crucial for these students in that they have thousands of engineers that retire every year. We just had 2 people retire from our school, but they have thousands there'll be 10,000 engineers that will retire from JPL by the time that our Mesa students will graduate high school and college, and the door will be open for them to work at some place like this. I was overwhelmed at one point to where we're at the DC trip, another phenomenal trip for the kids, for the students here. And this one young man's aspiration was only to be a mechanic, a car mechanic, which is a phenomenal career. It's a great thing. But as we stood there in the Edvard Mazy Museum, I said, I want to have you look at those rockets behind you. The space shuttle is right there. Do you know how fast that travels? That's 17,500 miles per hour. I said, this is where you want to be a mechanic. And it just opens up doors for our students. So when they go to places like this, saying, one day they will be replacing an engineer that works there.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mrs. Dryden was able to attend, and very thankful to her and so many other chaperones who were able to participate throughout the day. And here's what I'll say in a bit of a response to that. I'll just say my job is to try to provide more and more opportunities for kids to see themselves in different spaces. And if it affirms their dreams, great. And if it provides them with new dreams, that's even better. Because many of our students don't see themselves there. Many of our students certainly will and can and did. But it's beautiful to see that that's the mosaic that Mesa is, right? And so for me, the more that we can pattern and focus on experiences that bring value to their lives, that give them windows into things that they want to be a part of and that are going to benefit them, their family, and their community, I think that's really where our aim should be. So um, uh, it was just a great opportunity. I don't believe one opportunity alone does it, but when you start stacking them over time, then they start sending a message. This place cares and believes that this is what I will be, who I will be. I think that's really what I'm pursuing, what our staff is pursuing, and I'm sure that that's what parents want to see for their kids. So, Mrs. Dryden, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but thank you so much for being there, you and Greg.
Yeah, no, we were happy to be a part of it. It gave the kids glimpses of real things, prototypes, and we're gonna go to space, things that have come back from space. And we missed the Europa Clipper being there in that clean room, which is the bottom corner picture, by a week, or we could have seen it literally consume the entire clean room that you can look down to. But I think it's so fun to give these opportunities to the kids so that they can see that there's also a lot of different jobs. Not everybody is literally the rocket scientist who designs it. Somebody else has to build it. Somebody else has to test it. Somebody else has to think of the timing and the communications that's going to happen with it. So, it's not just literally being a rocket scientist. There's so many different opportunities with something like JPL and NASA that you may not think of. You may just think it's engineers. It's a lot more than engineers.
Yeah, so we more than anything else are just want to continue to find those opportunities, make them a priority, and we'll continue to do that work into next coming year. In addition to that, just another big highlight for us was our spring music concert. I understand I'm biased, and I'm very, very honest about that, but I just feel like every single year has gotten better and better and better. Like our musicians have gotten better and better and better. I've always felt, at least in the time that I've been here, which coincides with Miss Wong's time here at Mesa, that she has done a remarkable job to take novice musicians and turn them into musicians, into kids who are playing pieces, who are willing to showcase their efforts either in solos or in quartets even. And it was an amazing opportunity for me to see how far we've come in terms of our program. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to Ms. Wong, who's our music teacher and band director. I don't know how many instruments she plays, but it's several. And I think it's like 5 or 6 at least. And she would say it's like 4 or 5 because doesn't master all of them. But nevertheless, she is a true gift to us here at Mesa, because she is one of those rare people that is a musician in her own right and can take that musical understanding and convey it and impart it to young people. And not, some people have one or the other, and very few have both. And I think she really does have both. So I've been very impressed by her efforts. And I think the showcase and the concert puts that out to the community in ways that I think are that we should all be proud of, and very representative of the kind of work that we're doing here at Mesa. Okay, moving on. We're going to, we've wrapped up CASP testing. The last of it was this past week or so, week and a half now. And, we're awaiting the results. I think no matter what the results, certainly we want favorable results, no doubt about that. But I appreciate the way in which we've approached this particular season, the care and the diligence the kids demonstrated, and of course, the support of teachers, staff, and parents and families. We are actually we're always working to try to bring more and more families into a full understanding of where their child happens to be at year's end. And to that end, we've actually worked, we're partnering with ETS, which is the maker and the publisher of these assessments, to create full personalized videos that will share, that once we get the results will be shared with families, so that they can see in a graphic form what that performance looks like, how it stacks up relative to grade level and so on, just as another way of ensuring that we are able to bring our parents along and families along into understanding and better supporting their children and better partnering with us as a school. So anyhow, that is something that has concluded, and we're going to be awaiting the results in the near future. Yes, they start to trickle in around next week or so, but they'll slowly start to come in over the next coming weeks. So probably in July, we should have a fair amount of certainty about where we are.
Narratives that they have to look over and grade. Do you know how many people or who takes a look at these responses and scores them?
I haven't checked on that lately, but I know historically they do hire a number of assessors, if you will, that are basically just reviewing those and operating off of a rubric. They're trained and they're given training about how to go about it. I would not be surprised if increasingly, well, certainly parts of the assessment are AI generated just because of the speed at which it comes out. But I think increasingly we'll see maybe more of the AI technology being used for that in order to accelerate the results. But my understanding is that they still use assessors and that those are happening on a rolling basis, that these assessments are being reviewed and compared according to their rubric, their corresponding rubric. Next item is, so it's a little bit of a dense topic, and it's going to come in a couple of different sections. So I'll give you the big overview now. Needless to say, we've been having conversations around many things, instruction related, learning related. And over the last several months, we've engaged in conversation with our staff around learning of mathematics. And specifically, we began to ground on the instructional materials. And so what you see here is an overview of where we are and where we hope to be in the near future. So discussions with staff have really focused on the outcomes of our mathematics instruction or our mathematics program, K or TK8. Our school leadership team, which is a representative sampling of our teachers across grade spans, came together several months ago and started this conversation. From there, it went into the grade level teams as well. And they really boiled down to consideration of three options, just where we are now. One was to continue the use of our adopted materials as they've currently been and currently constructed. The other one was to consider a pilot from a selected set of materials. And the third was to implement illustrative math. Now, this is where I need to give you a brief background. Illustrative math has been used in middle school grades since before my arrival here at Mason, in grades 6 through 8, over the last 6 years. And the middle school teachers are single subject credentials or have single subject credentials in math, 6, 7, and 8. And the report, I'm sorry, that implementation has yielded a lot more engagement with math, especially in middle school. It has not been easy. There's still a lot of mathematical foundations that our kids and many times lack, not always, but many times. And the idea was that the way in which math content was presented really did two things. It allowed students that maybe didn't have the foundations yet to still access the content while still challenging those that did have it to more task-based assignments, more task-based approaches. So after several months of conversation, and we really needed to make a decision, teachers really felt strongly that it needed to be not just by grade span. Initially, we considered maybe a couple of grades, but they really felt strongly that it should be all grades. And there's some very valid reasons for that. So With that said, this particular set of documents is incredibly highly rated. It is, you see there, or linked is a third-party review of those materials in K5 and 6-8. And their recommendation, and I do support the recommendation, is to implement materials in K5 beginning this coming year. So the next slide will share with you a little bit of what that distribution was of teacher input. There were a total of 18 responses. Some of our teachers who don't teach math opted out or may have opted out, but 18 responses, and close to 70% wanted to implement illustrative math as our curriculum. One of the benefits of doing it also this way is there's a number of them, but I'll just cite a couple. One is that I think for us as a TK school, it would be really important to center on a particular set of materials and those routines that are associated with them. That way students don't need to relearn things along the way. The other thing is, how does it complement other initiatives that we have in place? One big one, and we'll talk about it later, is AVID. Many of the routines that are embedded in this math program are extremely complementary, or even are a part of the AVID program, or the AVID set of routines. And so I think from that standpoint, we're going to see a lot of coherence in our program. So with that said, later in this agenda, you'll see a recommendation coupled with professional learning associated with that implementation. And the idea here is twofold, is to introduce a better, more robust, more solid set of curricula, open source, which is another important key point, as well as bring in professional learning that helps teachers become more confident and well-versed teachers of mathematics moving forward, which is also something that in many conversations with teachers surfaced as a desire. So I know I've said a lot, and either now or later, I'm very open to any questions or comments from the board.
When would this be implemented?
It would start next year. And as I mentioned, these materials already exist and these routines already exist in middle school. The thinking would be that they start much earlier in order to have that continuity year to year, so that there is more of a foundation from the early grades on through middle school. So that would really start next year. We've been working over the last couple of months on securing dates. And by the way, the commitment that I made to teachers is that this would not be a one-year initiative. I think it's going to be multiple years where we need to grow, learn, and implement effectively in order to see the kind of gains that we want to see in our math program.
So I have a question. When we were talking and discussing this with the lower grades, because the middle school is already using it, is this something that there was like maybe a Wednesday topic or two on where they got to test drive and really see the materials and see not just maybe the workbooks or the worksheets, but actually look through students' works that like middle school is currently using to see how the kids are absorbing it as well? Or was it just kind of going the overview of the program with them?
It was more of an overview, to be quite honest with you. And that was certainly part of the discussion. It's what would piloting mean, right? And one thing that came up and I introduced to the topic is, it's a real challenge to pilot as our school and certain grade levels becomes a little smaller, because it really pushes against people's ability to still work as part of their team. And so that was one of the reasons why I would say that some of our folks weren't as maybe invested in piloting multiple materials. To be quite frank, the lower grade was where some of the greatest maybe questions came up, more so because they are further removed from the middle school.
Right.
So we explored and we talked about the possibility of just going more phased in grades 3 through 5, right? And then maybe reaching into TK2. But again, there was a significant amount of teachers who felt like that was something that would be, I don't want to interpret for them, but some of the things that were cited was that it would be best to go in as a staff. And so the professional learning, as we turn our page or turn our attention to that, will be dedicated by grade span. Right? And that grade span will allow for there to be dedicated conversations to those approaches that are best suited for younger children as opposed to older kids as well. So I'm trying to give you as straightforward of an answer, but also represent that many points were raised very legitimately and were very much heard over the span of about 3 months or so.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily mean piloting the program. I meant literally, like we were talking about how we have kids, from TK and kindergarten and first that kind of go all the way to 8th grade. So if it was possible for them to figure out how to incorporate, into the younger grades, they know the kids that when they had them as 5th graders are now 8th graders. And so if they could see maybe where they were at, because they know where they were at when they had these individuals, and then how this instructional materials and how these workbooks are being, actually used by the current, middle classers that they had in their classes several years ago.
I see what you mean. Yes, yes. And we certainly will make that a greater area of focus, certainly. In fact, it's going to be the start of our year. And we're going to try to work through those cross grade level discussions. But no, to be honest with you, it didn't quite reach that level of conversation quite yet. Okay, so this topic will resurface, and we'll certainly hear more questions on that point. In terms of facilities, one of the several things are happening and happening very quickly. So we have a well replacement that is slated to start on Monday, and so that's well underway. We're working very diligently, fast and furious, to try to get everything aligned. We've had numerous now conversations with and messaging back and forth with our contractor, and we've been given a construction schedule, and the construction schedule is slated to start Monday, June 17th, and conclude with site cleanup on Friday, August 9th, which is an incredibly aggressive timeline, but one that the feeling amongst people far more qualified than I feel very confident they can fulfill. So we're working through some things for sure, but right now that's where we find ourselves, and we're just trying to capitalize on the remaining part of this week to do what we need to do to ready ourselves as well. Our facilities master plan, that's well underway. That'll actually be a deliverable at the end of July, I believe, or early August. I'm working out that timeline with Mr. De Leon over at BSA. And then lastly, this is dense, so I'm hoping that folks can that all of you as a board can appreciate that this has been a pretty extensive process on our part. Right now, we have buses slated for delivery in fall winter of this year, but no reasonable means by which to charge them. So over the last 6 months, probably longer than that, we've been diligently working on options, and our main point of contact has been SCE. After a lot of Southern California Edison, after much conversation, we landed on what's called an owner build. So with that said, right now what we are doing is trying to pursue multiple grant opportunities, and I listed some of the ones that we're most actively engaged on there below, in order to install the infrastructure. And right now, what we want to do is install one DC charger, which is considered a level 3. It would charge a bus in anywhere between approximately 2 hours would be the full charge time. And 4 chargers, 4 level 2 chargers, which are smaller, less capacity. Now, just work with me on this part of it. The main point that we've arrived at, that I've arrived at, is how do we minimize the cost of the district? I'm not quite sure that we'll be able to eliminate it, but I think it's now about minimizing. If we were to be successful and get approved for those 4 level 2 chargers, we could receive as much as $40,000 to go toward that installation. And bear in mind, the infrastructure that it would take, or the work that it would take to go from that main panel all the way out to the parking lot, it would require boring in order to pull power from that main frame all the way out. It's going to be effectively the same installing 1 or 4. The process is effectively the same. So the idea here is to maximize on possible grant opportunities. And so we're working again fast and furious on that to try to capitalize on and reclaim as much of the grants as we can. But the ideal would be for us to create this infrastructure, which would keep us equipped for the next 5 to 10 years.
The cost of fuel versus the cost of charging. Have we looked at those numbers to see what the savings would be, if any?
To be honest with you, it would take us a while to recoup savings, right? Because fuel just happens to be, for the most part, cheaper. But here's the thing, we're making a long-term investment, right? And we're trying to move in the direction of green energy, or renewable energy, I should say. And I think if this is going to be a 10-year investment, let's just say, over the arc of that 10 years, we would probably be in a very, especially when you're talking about actual cost of the district, when you account for grants and such, including the cost of the vehicles, that will be a sound investment for us in comparison to fuel charges. But no, I haven't run the figures. They wouldn't be very difficult because we can easily calculate year to year what the cost is for fuel. We have that a number, but I think it's about more than just cost, right? Neil, I'm sorry, Dr. Canby, you have a question, sorry.
Right. My one question was, are there any partnerships that you've explored with other districts or on a countywide basis that are also going electric, that we might be able to come up with maybe a central charging, or us putting in and having somebody else, like one of the smallers, bring their bus over? Are there any partnerships that you explored in that way, or are you aware of anybody else that's going to an all electric fleet like we are, or at least majority electric fleet?
Yeah, a number of districts, that's a great question. A number of districts have moved in that direction, but where we are geographically would make it very difficult on a day-to-day basis to be able to run the buses, right? And be able to have them charged up. The closest partner that we would have would be SOMAS, but even SOMAS, when you're talking about the day-to-day travel and such, we certainly have explored it as a temporary measure, but not necessarily as a permanent one. And I think that was early on a conversation that was had just in terms of pursuing what kind of infrastructure we would need or want. We pretty quickly determined that our fleet size will never be such that Southern California Edison would outfit us. Now, that may have changed recently, but here's the challenge, the dilemma. Their approximation is anywhere between 18 and 24 months away. And that's the other competing timeline that exists for us. So our ability to be able to wait that long would be very much challenged, very much challenged. Yeah, but we certainly have explored that idea, and I'm afraid to say it just wouldn't make a lot of practical sense from that standpoint, because no other district facility, or even no other district facility, let's put it that way, would be proximal enough to us to where that would make sense. Pleasant Valley, SOMAS, and Rio are the closest neighbors here, maybe Ventura Unified, but as you can see, they're all pretty remote or pretty geographically apart from us to make the charging situation work regularly. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Yeah. So other questions that I can answer, because this topic will come up. Please know that we're going to, what I'm looking to do is position us to be able to conduct this work over the summer, ideally, if we can pull it off. But it may be something that we don't want to miss time and not be able to take advantage of grant opportunities and grants do have to be approved before you start the work. So we need to be very conscious of those timelines, but I want to be more at the ready in the event that those all come together.
And please.
Have our grants, sorry.
I just want to be reminded about what kind of, how far can we go on a charge with a bus? You know, that's something that's new to us. What are they proposing as far as mileage or, you know, how many hours that we can
Yeah.
travel between charges?
Great question. So on a full charge, and full doesn't mean 100%, right? It would be approximately 162 miles. So, you know, we would be able to get to LA and back, for example.
Well, how
That's-
many
that would be
miles are we
realistic.
driving per day on average?
15 maybe, 15 to 20. if
So I
we're-
think, yeah, it's no more than 40 miles a day from when I had a discussion with one of our bus
Yeah,
drivers.
it's about 15 to 20 miles. It depends on the route, but it's about
Yeah.
15 to 20 miles, maybe one way, and that's just with all the stops included. So some of those might even be less than that. So that's just an approximation. So for our daily drive, with even the level 2 chargers, we would be able to take those vehicles out as daily drivers, even with the level 2. But the ideal would be that level 3. Okay. So anyhow, there is an item later in the agenda that speaks to this. And again, I wanted to provide the board with some background.
I just
So
have
I
one
conclude-
question about the
Yeah,
grants.
go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I put my hand up. That you said we have to have the grants prior to construction or installation, right? So do we have all of the applications for the grants ready to be submitted? Is that something that we're prioritizing?
Yes, it's being prioritized. The challenge is that we needed to have, part of the application material is the
The funding or the cost?
proposals and also a proposal from the installer. And so we're still waiting on the installer to give us back, to get us a proposal, particularly because it requires boring underneath the parking lot. So we're still waiting on that. Okay, so last item, attendance. Just I want to say that, you know, very proud of the fact that we met our target for this last month of May, 95.3. So if you look at the last February through May, we are, you know, in a good position there. And we'll hope to continue that into this last couple of weeks of the school year, or now it's the last couple of days, but certainly looking to pursue that momentum into next year. And lastly, just upcoming events, we will have promotion on Friday, June 14th at 4 p.m. And we will be right back at it with summer learning in July. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramirez, for those reports. As we continue on, board members' reports and communications. So we want to begin with the correspondence from the Ventura County Office of Education summary of the changes to the Ventura County plan of expelled students. And I'd like to give Dr. Ramirez a little bit of time to discuss that.
This is just a notification from the county office that works with public school districts in this county to address protocols and expectations when it comes to expelled youth. We've been very fortunate in that that's not been a challenge for Mesa. But that's there, and they asked us to ensure that it was on our represented in our board meeting.
Okay. Any other reports or communications from board members?
Can I just ask a quick question to Dr. Ramirez about that? So the way I read that was that it's the county superintendent's job to create this plan, but it's not our district's job to create this plan. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, it is an obligation that falls on county offices. But they're very inclusive of districts, and they always want to keep us in the fold when it comes to programming, and particularly with marginalized youth.
Thank you.
All right. Any other interests or concerns or reports and communications? Seeing and hearing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda for tonight?
Make a motion.
Second.
Any items to discuss on the consent agenda?
Am I the only one? I just had a couple of quick questions. I guess I was wondering, there seems to be some potential surplus in the cafeteria fund. So I was wondering if we have plans for that, or if we're able to carry over the surplus that's being left to the next school year.
Yeah, surpluses carry over. And I think I know where you're going with that, Mrs. Dryden. I'm going to tell you where some of that surplus will go. You ready for this?
Ready?
We're going to be looking to onboard, and we're starting this week with compostable trays. That is something that fortunately, unfortunately, may incur additional cost. And then we are looking to reinvest that into some food items for the next coming year. But that compostable trays has been on our mind for a while now, as we've started our food waste program, and our kids actually petitioned me. A good cluster of our middle school kids reached out to me about making that a reality, and so we're going to trial it out this week. Believe it or not, some of the things that give me pause have nothing to do with desire, but more with availability. And so we're going to try it. We're going to see how it goes. And hopefully that's something that can create better environmental or less environmental impact and greater environmental awareness amongst our students. So that's some of the ways in which some of that carryover may be utilized this coming year.
Excellent.
Are we
I
gonna
think
locally or send it out?
Well, then we think it can be put in with the other organics too. So it should also very much help with streamlining operations and exiting the cafeteria as well.
Yeah, and that was the reason for it. So anyway, not to belabor the point, but
Yeah.
we're still working on making sure that we have a steady supply and supplier of those trays, because a lot of things unfortunately have been a little bit hit or miss when it comes to food service supplies. But anyway, we're trialing that out this week, and yes, it should create for better routines and a less impact to the environment, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. I think that's great. I'm super excited about it. I have another question on item G, which is the Ventura County Office of Education Migrant Education Program MOU. Just a clerical thing. The contract address is for 3900 Mesa Road instead of 3901. I don't know if that's a big deal, not a big deal, but thought I would point it out, because you know me in contract language. And then I think those are all my questions on the consent.
Thank you. We'll clarify that address.
Yeah.
Anything further? Dr. Canby, do you have anything? Okay, hearing nothing. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item 11, the informational discussion public hearing, like the open a public hearing regarding the Mason Union School District Local Control Accountability Plan. And with that, I'd like to open that hearing at 7:55.
So there is a presentation here attached, and I'm going to do my best to give a good overview of it. So this is that picture that you saw earlier, just a little bit more zoomed in. That's only approximately half of our cohort, so some familiar faces there for some of us. Moving forward, let me skip through a little bit. As the board is aware, we are looking at a renewal. But as I've messaged before, we're looking at bringing over some of our goals and many of our actions, because in large part, we have only in some instances begun some of those actions. So if you could maybe slide over a little bit more. This is a really important slide for me because it's something that I walk around really trying to understand and play a part in developing, where there is really a seamless transition from this governance team, from the Board of Trustees, all the way through the impact to student learning. And of course, all of the people who are in between are our staff, our families, myself, Ms. Kuklinski as a principal. And, even for being a small place, we can get a little complicated. And we're trying to really simplify to the extent that we can. So we always want to be really lockstep with each other, no matter what our role is. Next slide. We continue to focus on our framework for the future. And more specifically, we're at a stage where now that is really gaining traction with very specific actions. And we'll talk about those in just a minute. But our goals really are for that learner profile, to develop learners that are just, that have those competencies. And our goal is to try to align many, many different plans so that they're all speaking to each other and working in conjunction. So as we finish off a year 3, I wanted to just share, as we go along, some of the localized data that we have. This is incomplete. Our end of year is still being tabulated, but you'll see there, this is in STAR. This is in our in our local measure. We use STAR as a literacy assessment. You see there on the far left column, the 2023 results. Now, mind you, actually, those are results for that particular cohort. So you'll see that they're representing from 4th through 8th. The 3rd grade coming in does not have test scores. But as you see, the beginning of year flow all the way out through spring, you see where our performance was. And of course, we've now recently concluded the year with an end of year assessment, and then we're expecting the results back. So by August, when we return, you'll be able to see this table completed. So this just gives you a high level snapshot of where we've been. Next slide talks about math. To be quite frank, math, and this is the reason why the earlier item was so pressing and important, we have seen our math performance just not live up to what we all know we want for our students. And so it required a much more involved conversation. And we know we can do better, and we will do better. So I just wanted to share with you that these are data sets that we certainly pay close attention to. We do our best to have students buy into them, not always successful, particularly by the time we get to be in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But it is something that is very, very important. Next slide. And then this is also not end of year, it's more spring. Our end of year just was tabulated very recently, and I wasn't able to put it all in this slide. But what we're starting to see, or what we've been seeing, is that our efforts with our early childhood initiatives, staffing, schedules, use of materials has resulted in very promising results. And our goal is to continue to focus on those results and build upon them year over year. So you see there in grade K, for example, 37% are exceeding the standard by way of this particular assessment. Another 37 are meeting. So that's a very favorable place to be in by spring. And I'm still reviewing the end of year data. So, you know, what we've seen is that the things that we've put in place have taken us a few years to really dial in to a greater extent, but we're seeing results come out of that, out of those efforts. Next slide, please. So now just a high level view of the LCAP goals. Here are the goals. Those will remain. The actions will be modified. So next slide. In goal 1, you'll see there, we're going to continue to support our after school program. After school program continues to be a big area of emphasis. There were some things that did not materialize this year that were very unfortunate, but I think it's still a work in progress. And Ms. Hokamp did a tremendous deal to try to bring a lot of good value to that program and in support of students. And so that will continue into the summer, actually, because she'll be with us during the summer for summer learning. In instructional materials, this is where I want to spend just a minute. We expect to be able to implement math curriculum of illustrative math in grades K-5. And we are working, this year we implemented NGSS science curriculum in grades 6-8. It's our first year there. And we are field testing. We're participating in a statewide pilot of materials as well. Very proud of that work. And as we turn our attention to further implementation of AVID, this year we were in 5-8. Next year we will onboard grades 3 and 4 as well. We want to continue to push that further and further down with a goal of getting to grades TK2 by the following year. And the idea would be to really focus on what it says there is WICRS. That's the acronym that AVID uses, but a very specific sharp focus on rigor, rigorous tasks, rigorous learning, and writing. In goal 2, we'll continue, as you saw earlier, to focus on experiential learning, learning out in the field, learning beyond the classroom. We will continue to employ the staffing, or we'll continue to staff our school counselor position. She's been phenomenal. Miss Mariela Inda has been great for us this year, has been a great steadying influence, and has ingratiated herself tremendously well to the community. And then again, the continuation of AVID. In goal 2 as well, in goal 3, we're actually going to take a little bit of a decrease to mental health services. Now you may ask why. Well, funding is a little more challenged these days. And so we're trying to find ways to round out a little bit of that. This happens to be a contracted service, and the rate of pay increases, which means that in order to stay with our budget, sometimes we need to revisit and right-size our available hours and services. So we're hoping that I'm actually going to be participating in interviews Wednesday, for that psychologist position. And our goal is to coordinate services. Together, our mental health therapists have seen well over 50 students this year in either individual counseling or small group counseling. So I think that's a signal that these kinds of efforts need to continue. And our final goal, which is goal 4, is fostering a growth culture of continued growth and professional learning. And from that standpoint, we will continue to partner with AVID, of course, of the VCOE, and continue with some of that work that we've done to support students on the behavioral side as well. With that said, I'll entertain any questions or clarifying points.
I guess I have a question regarding, like, these are really great narrative goals. I think, have we also put it quantified any goals? So we talk about, increasing, maybe the at grade level and exceeding grade level by a certain percentage, or is it mainly just narrative?
No, we've talked about this going back to board goals. Our goal, and our staff is well aware that we'd like to see a 5% growth, right? That's where we had talked about dating back to last summer. That continues to be our goal. You'll see that reflected in the actual tables, in the actual plan, in the draft plan. I hope I'm answering your question correctly.
I have
Yeah.
some questions about the local control accountability plan, the annual update.
Mhm.
Are we there yet or?
No, it's fine. It's fine to go there because those are all attachments. Yes, go ahead. It's fine.
I'm looking at page 2, and it talks about the metric. It talks about baseline. It says 60% of students. Is that 60% that baseline? Is it state or is it a baseline from our district?
That's actually a baseline from our district. Interestingly enough, the way that the LCAP is written, once you establish a goal for yourself, that 3-year goal, once you get to those 3 years, or as you head into those 3 years, you can't change it, right? So they basically say, if you set out 3 years ago that your baseline would be a certain mark, then you are compelled to continue to try to reach that mark. Doesn't matter how far or close you are to it. So that baseline is a local measure. It is not a statewide measure.
And then year 1 outcome, would that be 2021 through 2022? And then year 2, 2022 through 2023, and year 3, 2023 through 2024.
That is correct. Absolutely.
So then year. So the results for for ELA under CASP should be cited under year 1 outcome, which is 2021 through 2022, and that is 43.43%. Shouldn't that be there?
No, because what happened is in that 21-22 school year, we didn't assess.
Okay.
That's why there was no year 1 baseline.
So then year 2.
Or
20
I'm sorry, year 1 outcome, correct?
Right. So year 2 outcome, 2022 through 2023.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I'll have to take a closer look at this because I take that back. The year that we didn't assess was 2020,
Right, that was before.
2021, right?
Right, so then the 49.3%
Would have been for
should
the
be
prior year,
under
right?
the prior year, which is 2021 through 2022. That's for ELA, and then year 2 outcome,
Right.
that's 43.43%.
Yes, yes.
Right,
So I'll clean this up,
Okay.
because you're right on. Absolutely.
And then I see that the desired outcome for 2023 through 2024 was initially 75%, but then it was updated to 55%.
Yes, so coming off of the pandemic, as you've seen in our test scores, they are not what they were pre-pandemic. And so you'll see it in the new draft, that new draft, as baseline, it takes last year's test scores, and it basically maps it out by a 5% growth, consistent with, or approximately 5% growth, consistent with what the board had indicated were appropriate year-to-year goals.
So then under math, it should also be for 2021 through 2022, it should be 37.22%. And then the following year, year 2, okay. And then I was also looking at page 6 of that same report. And it shows towards the bottom of the paragraph in 2023, let's see. Now, okay, so The X's are because you
because we don't have
have not received the
data for
results.
this year yet,
Okay,
right? It's a placeholder.
okay, that's fine. All right, thank you.
Yeah, these will continue. So I'm glad that you're making these points. You're certainly highlighting some important information. Just to make a quick point, this is effectively a draft. We'll continue working through it until Thursday, and then shift it over to working it out with the county office, who also has to approve the plans before submitting to the state.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and, this is information, but it was a public hearing, right? So we'll close the public hearing at 8:11. And we'll move on to item B, which is public hearing for the 2024 through 2025 financial budget with Ms. Peterson. And this is also public hearing, so we'll open that up at 8:12. Do you have a presentation you want to share? Sure.
Good evening, members of the board. There's no audience here, but I'm not.
I can't hear Ms. Patterson's
She
audio.
just upgraded to being a panel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay. So as we look at our budget assumptions, it's hard to believe that we're a quarter of the century. We're a quarter of the 21st century through. So it's pretty amazing how time flies. And as we're working through budgets, we're looking at 24, 25, 26, 27, and 27, 28. Those are really very daunting to me to think that, one, I've been in school business since the early part of this century, and now to be where we're at and looking at, there's been some anomalies the last few years. One of which is when you look at the statutory COLA for 23-24, it's 8.22%. In 22-23 and 23-24, we've seen some of the highest COLAs that we've seen, at least in my career. I don't think ever. Most of my colleagues have never seen the size of COLAs that we have seen the last few years. But then you can see how it precipitously drops in 24-25 to 1.07%. And it's important to remember that COLA is not just driven by inflation factors, but it's tied more to wages throughout the country, certain sectors, and these amounts are published every April. So currently we're looking at a 1.07%, and the governor in his May revise affirmed that he would be in support of fully funding the 1.07% COLA. As we look at actual enrollment versus projected enrollment, currently in 23-24 on fall census day, it was 567 students. But when we look in 24-25, it jumps to 595 students. We've had several inter-district transfers, which is good news for Mesa. I think the word is beginning to get out of the incredible things that Mesa is doing. And so more and more families are attracted to come to Mesa, and we're seeing students come, especially in those upper grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Whereas in those grades, we've seen them exit historically, or at least in the last few years. When we look at our P2ADA projections, was 534.85 in 23-24. And when we look at 24-25, we're projecting ADA of 560.19. When we look at our actual funded ADA, it was 551.18, and that's because we're funded at the higher of the current year, prior year, or an average of the 3 prior years. And then you can see in 24-25, we're up to 561.11, and that is because it also includes those county served special ed students. So that's so that we're actually receiving slightly more funding than Mesa's actual ADA because of those students that are enrolled in county programs. Our unduplicated percentage in 23-24 was 39.63%. It jumps to about 41.05% in 24-25. And that's because it's a 3-year rolling average. We did have a fairly low year. And so we're now coming back to where we have been historically in that 41-42% percentile range. When we look at,
Can I interrupt you just real quickly?
yes,
I just wanted to interrupt on this. You talked about that the 551 was including those that were receiving services outside our district. Is that correct?
county served
County served. So that's county served
and special ed programs.
and special ed programs, but we're not serving them here. But
No, but they
but-
count in our ADA reporting because then we have a pass-through that where we pay back.
Right, so we just, any funds that we receive off of that are going straight to the county and out of the deficit as well? Or it used to be that, that there was always an encroachment for special ed. So is that a one-to-one payoff or are we also supplementing?
We're
those are
supplementing with
served.
excess costs.
There's an excess cost there as
Yes.
well.
And I'll discuss that further on in the
Because we're unable to
presentation.
do that in-house.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Okay. And then the CalPERS rate in 23-24 was 26.68%. As we were approaching the 24-25 school year, we were a little nervous about what the CalPERS rate would be because they do regular actuarial studies. And because the stock market has not performed favorably in the last year or two, we thought we might see a larger jump, but it actually was less than what we had historically been projecting. And then the CalSTRS rate currently is 19.1%, and we expect that to remain flat unless the legislature decides to take action to increase those percentages. When we look at multi-year budget assumptions, the 8.22% COLA for 23-24, 1.07% for 24-25. In 25-26, it's projected to jump up to 2.93%, and in 26-27, it's projected to be 3.08%. Gap funding was something that existed when we were in the process of implementing LCFF, and we've been fully funded in LCFF for the last several years, and there are no one-time discretionary funds in this budget. As I'm sure you've heard, the state is projecting deficit spending, and so that could potentially, so there's no anticipated one-time discretionary funds in this budget. When we look at our base rate for TK through grades 3, it's $10,025. In grades 4 through 6, it's $10,177. And in grades 7 through 8, it's $10,478. And then for grades TK through grades 3, we do receive an increase of 10.4% of that base rate, which is equal to $1,043. And then supplemental funding is 20% of the adjusted base rate or the base grant plus the grade span adjustment as it applies in grades TK through grades 3. And then concentration funding is for that percentage over 55% of unduplicated pupil counts. And as I referenced earlier, we're just in the 40-41 percentile range. So we do not receive any concentration grant funding at Mesa. So when we look at our LCFF entitlement per ADA for that's projected for 24-25, it's $11,747. And in 23-24 was $11,632. Again, I mentioned supplemental concentration grant funding. It's 41.05% in 24-25. It's projected to go up slightly in 25-26 to 41.27%. And in 26-27, 41.29%. So you can see how it incrementally increases year over year. And the projected LCFF entitlement per ADA in 25-26 is projected to be $12,096, and it jumps to $12,480 in 26-27. When we look at our estimated actuals versus the adopted budget, we are seeing a slight increase in LCFF funding. That's predominantly due to the increase in projected ADA. Our federal revenue is projected to remain fairly static at this point in time. And then our state revenue will drop slightly from the 23-24 to 24-25. And that's because we did receive slight augmentations in the discretionary instructional material, art, music, instructional materials block grant, and also in the learning recovery grant. So those amounts have been removed as we move forward in 24-25. And then a few programs will see the COLA, most will not. And then for local revenue, we anticipate that to drop slightly in 24-25. We always take a very conservative approach when we're looking at local revenue. Certificated salaries are down slightly. That's predominantly because of the 2 retirees, one of which there's been some shuffling of staff. So we're seeing some savings as we move forward into 24-25. Classified salaries go up slightly. Employee benefits are down slightly. And again, that's in relationship to certificated salaries. And books and supplies drop slightly from the current year into 24-25. And then services and other operating expenditures there's a slight drop as we go into 24-25, but for the most part remain static. And then we did have some capital outlay of $56,411 in 23-24, and that was for our E-rate category $2. So we had some matching that we were required to do. We don't anticipate any capital expenditures in the general fund for 24-25. And if there are, we'll budget those at that time. And then other outgo, there's $832,000 in 23-24, and that's projected to increase slightly in 24-25. Other outgo is this is one of the areas where excess cost is reflected, and also the pass-through of those funds, that special ed funds that go to Golden Valley. So that's made up of both amounts. And then, so we're actually seeing a decrease of both on the unrestricted and restricted side. We're seeing some deficit spending of about $663,000 in the current year. That will drop in 24-25. And then beginning fund balance, or excuse me, the ending fund balance is expected to drop slightly from $2,186,000 to $1,935,000 in 24-25. And that's due to some expenditures predominantly on the categorical side. When we look at our required reserve, it's $564,465 in 23-24, $546,828 in 24-25. So our unassigned dollars in 23-24 is for $532,000, and that will drop slightly in 24-25 to $485,000. We don't anticipate a significant amount of deficit spending as we move into 24-25. When we look at our multi-year projections, again, as I mentioned in 24-25, on the unrestricted side, which is the most important part of the budget, the restricted side, as long as there's sufficient revenue, then we're insulated from those expenditures, except for in the areas of predominantly special education. That's where we see the largest amount of encroachment. Although you will see that encroachment grow in 25-26 and 26-27, and that's because we're spending down those carryover dollars from ELOP. And so as we move into 25-26 and 26-27, we'll need to evaluate the ELOP program and those expenditures in order to right-size the budget. But that's predominantly where we're seeing the biggest impact of encroachment of course, other than special education. So when we look at our ending fund balance, again, in the current, in 24-25, it's projected to be $1,935,000. It drops slightly to $1,709,000 in 25-26, and down to $1,419,000 in 26-27. Although we do meet the required reserves, and on the unrestricted side, we're projecting reserve levels in 24-25 of about 11.33%, in 25-26 about 9.81%, and in 26-27 reserves of about 7.16%. But again, we have time to address that deficit spending as we move through in the next couple of years and we evaluate the budget and the needs of the budget. So when we look at our other funds, as was mentioned earlier, we are seeing some surpluses in the cafeteria fund. We will evaluate the cash on hand. We have to do a report at unaudited actuals, and we can't have more than 6 months of cash reserves on hand in that fund. And so there's a potential that in 24-25, we will need to develop some type of a plan with the state. But again, we have to work with the state on those excesses. And then as we also implement the new risk compostable trays, those will also have an impact of the budget. And then also looking at other ways to spend more of those dollars. It's good news for Mesa that we don't have deficit in our cafeteria program. Many of the larger districts run at huge deficits. So the cafeteria program is well run, and there's potential for making some changes and improvements in that program. When we look at Fund 14, in 24-25, we're looking at having an ending fund balance of about $708,000. We're still seeing very high interest payments of about 4% across all the funds. And so we're seeing those benefits in the current year, and those are expected to continue as we move into 24-25. In Fund 15, we are projected to have reserves of about $78,000, and we have taken into account the district's portion of the cost of the new buses. So we still have a small amount left of it, or not just a small amount, but a fairly sizable amount of about $78,000. When we look in our special reserve funds for technology, we have about $58,000, and then on equipment about $12,000. And then in our bond building fund, after the well project is complete, we're anticipating funding of about, or an ending fund balance of about $2.6 million. And then in our capital facilities developer fee fund, we have about $113,000 that is restricted predominantly only for growth. And so we can only use that for growth capital expenditures. And then we still have money sitting in the county schools facilities hardship of about $61,000. As we look at and close the books, there's a potential that we may move that just into your Fund 14. We've kept it in Fund 35 in case of audit, but we've now, that money has been there since I've been at BSA, which is 9+ years. So I feel comfortable in moving that into Fund 14. And then when we look at the bond interest and redemption funds, those are restricted for and can only strictly be used for debt service on the bonds. And then as we look to the new budget year, the governor and legislature have been working together on coming up with a final plan. They must have a budget pass by June 15th. But as we've seen in the last few years, they will most likely have a budget, but there's a significant number of trailer bills that come after that. And so they found a workaround to the statute. And so we probably won't have actual confirmed information as it relates to budget and some of the other proposed legislation until the first part or even into mid-August. So there's discussion of potentially doing some deferrals. The governor had proposed a maneuver because we received more dollars in 22-23 above the Prop 98 levels, and he had proposed a maneuver. Several of the lobbyist groups throughout the state, including CTA, AXA, CASBO, pushed back against the governor because it would have had long-term ramifications for Prop 98 and potentially, normally we see more of an upward curve in Prop 98, and his maneuver would have flattened Prop 98, and over a period of time, we would have lost billions of dollars to schools. So he has come up with an agreement with CTA in order to avoid that maneuver because there was some threats of lawsuits. So we will see what the outcome is. There may be some deferrals because cash at the state is becoming more and more restrictive. And so one of the things that the state has done historically is to fix the deficits is to do deferrals. And so schools are impacted, but we do have cash reserve and other funds. So I think we're in a great shape. We can borrow from all funds except for Fund 13 and Fund 51. So I think we're able to grapple with that. We have included the LCAP considerations in this budget, and we included those. And so it's just going to be a matter of managing cash flow as we move forward. Once we actually have an adopted budget, how the state's going to proceed. Are there any questions?
Did I see that our enrollment is expected to increase next year?
There's a spike next year, but then we drop down as well. What we're seeing is in the younger cohorts, we're down about a class. So probably anywhere from 25 to 26 students year over year in those younger grades. TK and K we're still, because TK is a fairly new program. Before the cutoff was December 5th. And so most of the districts held pretty tightly to that. You had to turn 5 prior to that in order to be LCFF eligible. And then incrementally, that date has moved forward. It was in February, that was in April, and now we're going to be at June 2nd. So we're still grappling, but because of the number of applications Mesa has seen, we've been able to make those considerations in the 24-25 budget, but not knowing what the future is bringing, we have been more conservative in those out years as we've been projecting those that enrollment. But again, we're funded for ADA purposes at the higher of current year, prior, or the average of the 3 prior years. And as I demonstrated earlier, we jump up to 561. So we'll be protected for the next year or two. We flatten out and drop.
So to give you actual numbers, we have right now projected 15 students coming into 6th grade.
Incoming.
Yes.
And we're at
Next year.
583 right now.
And 5 of them have younger siblings, 1 to 2. So all in, that's about 20 students additional, just from families in that around 6th grade. The other bit of welcome news is that right now, before the end of the year, we're projecting combined TKK, we're at 79 students projected. So why that's important is because in my years here, I've always had a target of 80, and we've come incrementally closer, but we've not gotten to 80 yet. This would be the first time in my 4 years here that we will come close to getting 80 before the end of the school year. We always get movement, so I don't want to, these are all projections, but I think they're very favorable in terms of reputation and understanding of families wanting to be at Mesa, right?
I think that's indicative of Mesa's reputation getting better.
We are doing, let me put it to you this way. It's a lot of different factors, but we are also doing better at messaging to the broader community who we are through social media. But make no mistake about it, our number one source of information is our existing parents and families. And I think that is what I constantly hear when I'm on the phone with prospective families. Right now, we are effectively at capacity in several grades, including 7 and 8.
So if we are at capacity, we would not be accepting more.
Is for that, for that, grade level. Correct.
That's correct, yes.
And
Yes.
the capacity is on students?
It depends on grade level because we want to keep our class sizes appropriate, modest wherever we can. But in that particular grade level, we have projections, but in effect, we also have to allow for some room for families who move into the community, right? And so inner districts right now in 7 and 8, and a couple of other grade levels like 1 and 2 are right now on pause.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in, let's see, I guess we'll just close the hearing then at 8.
You went on mute, Mr. Sullivan. Someone turn on their microphone.
Sorry about that. We ended, let me quickly recap. We ended the public hearing at 8:37, no action. We appreciate Tammy for her presentation. We're moving on to the action items. Item number 12A, recommendation to approve the amendment to the employment agreement between the superintendent and Mason Union School District. Do I have a motion?
It's
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Questions?
Thank you so much for your commitment and dedication, and we enjoy working with you. So I appreciate your hard work and always trying to find ways to make our school better.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the employment agreement between the superintendent and Mason Union School District, say aye.
aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Oh, yes.
I just want to express my appreciation to the board. You've all been fantastic. Thank you. And I feel like I've found myself a home here at Mesa, and very much looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, consideration of the approval of the certification of signatures for the period of July 1, 2024 and December 31st, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second?
I'll second.
Any comments? Well, we already started signing those for those that are remote, because that's usually moved to the end of the agenda so that they all be signed before we approve them. But all those in favor? Say aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item C, consideration of adoption of the following year-end resolutions. Resolution 23-24-12, the temporary loans between the district funds and fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolution 23-24-13, the appropriation transfers for fiscal year 2024 to 2025, and resolution 23-24-14, the authority for Mesa Union School District to improve the compensation and benefits for certain categories of employees after July 1, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for all those 3 resolutions.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments about these? These are traditional housekeeping things. Just keep it solvent. We do these at the end of every year. Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting these 3 resolutions, 23-24-12 through 23-24-13 and 23-24-14, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Let's see. Next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of resolution 23-24-15, the Mason Union Elementary School District ordering regular governing board member election, ordering the consolidation with other elections and consultings and constituting this specification of the election order to be held on November 5, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
And
Second.
is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Dr. Candy, did you second that? I thought I heard.
I did, but it's whoever, it's okay. I did second,
Okay.
but whoever was there.
All right.
doesn't matter.
So just for the record, who are we going with? Are we going with Mrs. Romero?
For the record, with Dr. Canby.
Dr. Kemby?
He's been trying for a while to second
I
something.
know,
so-
I've noticed
Come on, technology delay.
technology delay. Having said that, this is basically saying that our upcoming election will coincide with the regular election in the county and this nation. Any
So
comments?
the 2 trustees that are up for reelection are,
Myself, and I think, Ms. Ryder,
And Mr.
right?
Correct.
So. Any
What
further-
a question I had was this also doesn't say anything about area, like, you know, how we are now voting by area. I wasn't sure if that's something that we needed to include or if it's something that we are still just leaving a high level, but it's definitely something that's different than years past. So I just wanted to bring it up.
No, it will be recognized. This is basically the ordering above. We'll clarify, but I believe it does not speak to trustee area because that's already been resolved with the vote, with the commission.
and are we required to publish this at all in terms of notifying the public of the seats that are opening up?
It'll be on the ballot. And what we do
Right.
with this is we will submit it to our county office. And I believe they in turn submit those to the
Board of elections.
board.
County board.
Yes, county elections.
Right, and if it's not contested, then it's not going to appear on the ballot.
Correct,
Mhm.
correct, yes.
Like, if we get an appointment, yeah, you're right, we'd have to publish that and then wait 30 days in case somebody wanted to contest that.
That's correct.
Mhm.
But I think this is just a board action. That's saying that's when the election is going to be as opposed to paying for our own election.
Right, calling for a special election or something to that effect, right?
If I remember correctly, did we vote to have the $600 waived or paid for by the district if a trustee would like to submit a written, like a summary of?
As I recall, I
Last
think
we discussed, we said we were gonna leave that up to the individual if they want to do that. I think that's where we left it last time. We were not gonna cover the cost of that.
the district's not going to pay for that.
Okay, I wasn't sure what it was.
I
I
believe it's what Neil
hesitate
said.
to answer because I don't recall off memory. We'll have to figure that out.
Because I thought we had voted that we would pay.
It should be enumerated in our board policy. We'll have to go back. and-
Okay.
in the board policy. We'll have to go figure that out.
We have seven,
Got until, you know, a while to figure that out. We have a couple months.
7 weeks, I think it is. Full papers.
It's July.
August.
Yeah.
So,
Don't miss the deadline.
done before.
You've done, you did mention that, and then they had to appoint you.
That's an interesting period of my life. Anyway. Any other further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 23-24-15, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item E, which is consideration of approval of the MOU with the Ventura County Healthcare Agency for fiscal year July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Mr. Eidman will move. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, Dr. Kennedy will second that. Discussion. I have a question about this. I looked through the hours. It's basically 3 hours a week. 3 hours a month for this at the tune of about $535 per hour. But when it's delineated on their schedule, there's some significantly different. Is this all this work being done by the same person? Is that the reason for that huge discrepancy in price?
No, and typically, as was mentioned there, this is only really on an as-needed basis. I stipulate that and make sure that's known. And typically, it has to do with students who extend far beyond school-based counseling. So no, typically, it actually involves various providers.
So it's like a backup plan?
Yes. So what happens is we rely on our school-based counseling. We work with families. We rely also on any private insurance that a family may have as well. And like I said, this happens to be very, very rare that we look to it to this service, but we want to have it available in the event that we need it. We can act upon it.
Sure. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the MOU with the Ventura County Health Education or Healthcare Agency for the fiscal year July 1, 2024 through July 30th, 2025, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item F, consideration of approval of the agreement from Hatch and Cesario. Do I have a motion? Ms. Romero, she moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Hub seconds that. Any discussion?
Just as background, this is an agreement with Hatch and Cesario for services pertaining legal representation around matters involving special education. Some of this cost is deferred by our self-funding authority if we were in need to open a claim, worked over the years well with Ms. Melissa Hatch, who the board has gone to meet on at least one occasion over the years, and looking to continue that productive collaboration, but hoping not to employ it, to be quite frank about that.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the agreement from Hatch and Cesario, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item G, consideration of approval of the agreement from Milbrand Water Law. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Canby? Have a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Dryden? Any discussion with regards to the agreement for Milbrand Water Law?
Only similar to the partnership with Hatch and Cesario, to be used as a as-needed basis, in a very limited format. Mr. Miliband was an attorney working for a different firm up until very recently, and has decided to move out into his own practice. And I think for us in the short run, it would be wise to have that that partnership continue.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agreement from Miliband Water Law, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item H, consideration of approval of the Southern California Gas Company temporary right of entry agreement. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I looked at the exhibit in terms of where the egress would occur. How much interruption do you anticipate in terms of, with traffic before and after school?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, the plan is for them to conduct the bulk of their review in the summer months. Should that extend into August, we've already had the conversation several times about what our schedule looks like and hours during which they would cease or pause operations. We can expect that they'd have a crew of approximately anywhere between 4 and 6, with a few work trucks. It won't be in heavy machinery or heavy equipment, really. But anyway, the idea would be that during arrival and dismissal, depending on the day of the week, that they would halt or pause their operations during that window of time in order to avoid aggregating any challenges with traffic.
And the good thing that the construction or whatever they're going to be working on is in the outskirts of the campus. So it's not going to be anywhere near the classrooms.
Yeah, no, it won't be any, and just to reiterate, there will be no service interruption. It actually will be beneficial to us because they're actually inspecting the infrastructure, the pipes that run concurrent or along the 118. So we don't expect any interruption to services. We don't expect any safety concerns. And the other thing is the actual inspection won't be on site. They're actually only using on site to stage. It'll actually be on the Gruther farm that that particular location will be excavated. So anyway, yeah, it's us trying to be very supportive of what Southern California Gas is attempting to do, and minimizing the impact to Mesa operations or other activities.
And they'll be paying $2,000 a month.
That's correct.
And will these be restricted dollars, or will we be able to put them in whichever fund we choose?
General. is what
Those will go to general fund, and they will go to offset cost of electrification, is my thought.
Yeah, I was figuring how can we put that into the facilities and maintenance?
Yeah, and that's probably where it is. So yes, they are unrestricted, but we really want them to tie back into certainly any challenges that may occur out there, and just making sure that the space they use is appropriate, but they should really go back to facilities in general.
I have one comment and one question about this. So I think what Ms. Dryden was asking, can we put those in the categorical fund to pay for the electric? That would be one, I'm assuming. And two, what about remediation for any damage to the landscape?
It's factored into the 2,000.
Since the 2,000, so we would have to deal with that.
Correct. But there's not
Not tons.
there's not a lot of landscaping out there, nor is there anything that really we,
grass and trees.
yes, we would predict will create any problems that we can readily mitigate.
I also saw a clause where if are any, like, if there's any liability imposed on Mesa, that Edison would step in.
Yeah, that was a recommendation, in conferring with Mrs. Peterson.
That's
that we
great.
named as another party insured.
Right,
So that's a way of extending our coverage for sure.
right.
Southern California Gas.
I'm sorry?
Southern California Gas. Edison was the previous one.
Oh, sorry, yes, so SoCal Gas. And
Yes.
you see there the document that is part of the supporting materials around self-insurance. They contract with Sempra.
Anything else? Hearing nothing, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the Southern California Gas Company temporary right of entry agreement, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item I, consideration of approval of the proposal from Nuvi for the purchase of electric chargers. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Discussion.
These vehicle charging station, I mean, could we also tack on a charging station for vehicles in addition to what is here? I mean, is that even possible?
We will get to matters of how we may be able to meter the chargers for consumption by the public. We have not had that discussion quite yet. Right now, it's primarily to address the needs of our vehicle fleet, but that may arise in the near future.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I don't hear any other further questions or discussion. All those in favor of approving the proposal from Nuvi for the purchase of electric chargers, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item number next, J. Consideration of approval of the implementation of the illustrative mathematics K-8. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I move.
Dr. Canby, he moves in. Ms. Bruno, would you like to second that?
Sure.
All right, any questions or discussions regarding the illustrative mathematics implementation for K-8?
Guess I would just like to point out that it includes also like the learning plan and training in addition to the training material, in addition to the learning materials for the students. So it's both, or at least it appeared to be educational for the teachers and, you know, the actual documentation and workbooks for the kids.
And how quickly does this implementation go forward once approved?
We started already tentatively scheduling dates just to be on the safe side.
Right.
And so it will go forward immediately.
Okay, because my biggest concern is that the only drawback is, you know, there were penalties there if there were, you had to keep rescheduling.
No, I don't predict
For
so.
the teacher implementation.
Yeah, I don't predict so. We had timed it. We've been in conversations and have been putting a tentative hold on some dates until we gain confirmation. And at this point, that's what we'll do. And we'll be using some of those professional learning days at the start of the year to be able to accommodate, and then perhaps additional days to come, to be quite honest with you. This may not suffice.
Any other questions or concerns? Did you
For
say?
the cost of the materials per year, or is it for a set amount of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some of it is actually I don't have the invoices immediately in front of me, but the majority is actually startup cost. Or at least I would say 40% of it, minimum is a startup cost. Kits, for example, and materials that will probably have to be secured once every several years. The actual print cost, that was another big reason for consideration of this particular program, will be far less. So I predict that it'll be about 50% of the cost or so, year to year.
Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the implementation of the illustrative mathematics take rate, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item 13, personnel. Consideration of approval of hiring the following teachers and classified employees for summer school. Sarah Holcamp to be the lead teacher, Cynthia Martinez teacher, Stephen Hernandez as teacher, Christina Mendoza as education paraprofessional, Jose Carreno as a paraprofessional, Lana Pijaz, I hope I said the right, paraprofessional, and Audra Hampton as an activities leader, and Tessa Sullivan as an activities leader. Pardon me? Oh, keep going.
There's no page.
Samantha Gonzalez as an activities leader, Magdalena Figueroa as a substitute teacher, Alvera Castaneda as a food service worker, and Debbie Sussex as a food service worker. Do I have a motion
Make a motion.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What
That's our-
grades
they-
are,
Go ahead, Ms. Wright.
I was just say, what grades are we focusing on for summer school? Because it seems perhaps lower grades?
Yes, we will have middle school through Rise.
How many students in total do you anticipate?
We have our preliminary roster with.
And these are students that would need to attend summer school because they're underperforming?
These were students that were Any other questions?
Not from me.
Hearing none, all those in favor of hiring the following teachers and classified employees as outlined, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. And item 14, items for future consideration is going to be the LCAP and the 2024-2025 budget. And our next meeting is this coming Thursday, June 13th at 5 p.m. We have a special board meeting. Reminder for those that will be here for promotion, that's on Friday at 4 o'clock. Correct?
That is correct.
And our August meeting, regular meeting, when is that?
We don't have it here. August 20th.
Okay. 20th? On the Tuesday, the 20th?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Last year, it was like the week before.
Correct. Correct, it was.
Better this way, that way we.
Yeah. There's challenges either way, I think, for some trustees. But in this instance, it worked out that it would be the first day up.
Hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:04. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you for joining remotely, Dr. Canby and Jamie.
Thank you all.